As they leave Calvin's office, the lawyer tells them it probably won't be long before they identify the victim, and then things are going to get tense. You've got to be prepared for that. He looks them both in the eye. His gaze lingers longer on Tom, as if he can sense that of the two, Tom is the least prepared for what's going to happen. Tom suspects he's right. His wife is much stronger than he ever realized. He can't imagine cold-bloodedly faking his own death to escape a maniac and starting over as someone else. She must have nerves of steel, he thinks. He's not sure he likes thinking of her that way. As they make their way back to the car in the parking lot, Tom is utterly terrified. Their lives are going to enter a whole new realm of awful. She will probably be charged with murder. She will have to go to trial. She may even be convicted. He doesn't know if he's strong enough for this, if their love for each other can survive what's ahead. Tom drives, focusing on the road in front of him, mostly because he doesn't want to look at his wife. But he can feel her eyes on him. "So sorry, Tom," she says. "I didn't want to do this to you." He doesn't trust his voice to answer. He swallows and keeps his eyes straight ahead. "I never should have agreed to marry you without telling you everything," she whispers, distraught. It dawns on him then. They're not really married. On the day of their wedding, she was already legally married to someone else. The thought makes his head spin. She stood beside him when they were saying their vows, and she knew she was already married to somebody else. Her vows were meaningless. He has to resist the urge to stop the car suddenly and tell her to get out. Somehow he keeps driving. "It's okay," he says. "It's going to be okay." He's saying it automatically. He doesn't believe it. Maybe if he could just hold her without looking into her eyes, he would be all right. He needs a moment to ground himself again so that he can go on. But he's driving the car. They ride in silence. As they reach home, he tells her, "I have to go back to the office for a bit. Not for long. I'll be home soon for supper." She nods. "Okay." He stops in their driveway, and before she gets out of the car, he leans over and hugs her tight. For that moment, he tries to forget everything that's happened and to focus on how it feels to have her in his arms. Then he pulls away from her and says, "Don't run. Promise me." "I promise." He holds her eyes with his. Even now, he doesn't know if he believes her. Is this what life is going to be like now? Tom lets her go and then reverses the car and heads back downtown. He has no intention of returning to work. He heads back to his spot by the river, wishing he could wash himself clean of the whole sordid business, but knowing that he cannot. Not now, not ever. Bridget had been making a little baby sweater in pale yellow for a friend who was expecting, but found she couldn't bear it. So she switched to a colorful striped fall sweater for herself. But now the half-finished garment trails off her lap as she watches the house across the street. Her body tenses and she leans forward slightly. She sees Tom and Karen pull into the driveway and stop, but instead of getting out of the car, they sit there for a moment. Bridget waits expectantly. Now Karen's getting out and Tom isn't. Bridget wonders where they've been. She thinks a lot about Tom and Karen, about where they are, what they're doing, about their life together. It's like she's caught up in a particularly good television show. Can't wait to see what happens next. Bob tells her that she's obsessive. He complains that it's not normal. He tells her she's become obsessed with the Crufts' lives because she's lonely and bored and has nothing to do all day. He tells her she's too smart to be doing nothing. But he doesn't understand. He doesn't know. She watches Tom reverse the car and head back down the street. She can see through the open car window that his face is set and grim. She wonders if they've been arguing. She turns her attention to Karen, now unlocking the front door. She can sense discouragement in the way Karen carries her shoulders. Maybe they have argued. Bridget puts her knitting aside, grabs her keys, and locks her own door behind her. She walks over to Karen's house and rings the bell. When Karen opens the door and sees her, Bridget thinks she looks slightly reserved, even unwelcoming. Why isn't Karen happy to see her? "Hi, Bridget," Karen says, not opening the door wide. "I just got home. I've got a headache. I was actually just going to lie down a bit before supper." "Oh," Bridget says, "I thought you looked like you could use a friend." She gives Karen the warmest smile she knows how. "Is everything all right?" "Yeah, everything's fine," Karen says. Bridget stands her ground until Karen opens the door wider, and then she steps over the threshold. They settle into the living room. Karen looks exhausted. Her eyes are puffy as if she's been crying, and her hair has lost its shine. How much she's changed in just a few days, Bridget thinks. "Why don't you tell me what's going on?" she says. "It might help." "Nothing's going on," Karen says, running a hand through her lank hair. But Bridget knows she's lying. She's been watching everything unfold from across the street, and Karen looks far too distressed for nothing to be going on. She's not a fool. She wishes Karen wouldn't take her for one. "Is everything all right between you and Tom?" Bridget asks bluntly. What do you mean?" Karen says, clearly taken aback. "Well, I just saw him drive away and he looked angry, and you seem upset. This must be hard for him, all of this," Bridget says delicately. "The accident, the police." As Karen stares back at her, she amends for both of you. Karen shifts her eyes away, towards the window. After a short silence, Bridget asks, "Have you remembered anything helpful to the police?" "No," Karen says rather sharply. "How have things been with you?" she asks, trying to change the subject. "Karen, this is Bridget you're talking to. You can tell me anything." She means it. It annoys her that Karen is so tight-lipped. She doesn't disclose many of the intimate details of her life. Bridget has told Karen about her difficulties getting pregnant, her failed fertility treatments, but Karen never shares, even now, when things are far from perfect, and you'd think she'd need a friend. How shocking it must be for Karen, and she thinks suddenly that things aren't absolutely perfect. Things should be more equal between friends, Bridget believes, and as far as she's concerned, Karen hasn't done a good job with their friendship as she could have. Bridget has worked very hard at this friendship. Karen has no idea how hard it's been, how much she's had to swallow. Karen doesn't know about her and Tom, how difficult it's been for her all this time, watching Karen and Tom together, having to pretend it doesn't bother her. So many times she's been tempted to blurt it out, but she always bites her tongue. Karen's never taken that great an interest in Bridget's life, really, Bridget thinks now. Not as great an interest as Bridget has taken in hers. For instance, Karen has never shown much curiosity about her knitting blog, something that has always bugged her. Bridget Cruikshank is a goddess among online knitters, but Karen doesn't knit and she doesn't care. Karen looks at her now and says, "I appreciate your concern, Bridget, I really do. You're a good friend." She smiles at Bridget. Bridget smiles back mechanically. "You know, my headache's getting worse. I should probably lie down," Karen says. She gets up off the sofa and walks Bridget to the door. "I hope you feel better," Bridget says, and gives Karen a brief hug. Then she walks back across the street to her own empty house and takes up her position at the window with her knitting to wait for Tom to come home. It's grown late in the afternoon, and it seems clear that Karen Krupp isn't going to show up voluntarily. Rasbach is pondering next steps when Jennings enters his office and says, "We might have something." Rosbach lifts his eyes. I just got a call from a pawnbroker I spoke to after we found the body. He says a boy just pawned a watch and a ring. Does he know the boy? Yup. Let's go, Rosbach says, grabbing his shoulder harness and his jacket. When they arrive at Gus's pawn shop, the place is empty except for the owner standing behind a grimy counter. The man nods at Jennings, recognizing him, and chews the inside of his cheek. This is Gus, Jennings says, introducing him to Rosbach. The man nods. Want to show us what you've got? Jennings asks. The man dips below the counter and brings out a man's watch and lays it on the glass counter. Beside it, he places a heavy gold ring. The detectives take a look. Looks expensive, Rosbach says. Yep, genuine Rolex. Rosbach pulls on a pair of latex gloves and examines first the watch and then the ring for any identifying marks or engraving, but there's nothing. He puts the items back down on the counter, disappointed. How did the boy say he came by these? Rosbach asks. He said he found them. What's his name? Rosbach asks. Here's the thing, Gus says. I know the kid. He's only 14 years old. I don't want him to get into a lot of trouble. I understand, Rosbach says, but we need to know if he found anything else, any ID along with the jewelry. Something that will help us with our investigation. We don't think this boy had anything to do with the murder. I just want you to scare him, Gus says. Like, scare him straight, you know? Too many kids get into crime around here. I don't want to see him go down that road. Sure, I get that, Rosbach says, nodding. What's his name? Duncan Mackey. Lives over on Fenton, number 153. I know the family. Go easy on him, but not too easy. Rosbach and Jennings drive to the address Gus gave them. Rosbach is hoping that this is the lead they've been waiting for. He knocks on the front door of the shabby house. He's relieved when a woman answers because he can't talk to the boy without a responsible adult present. Rosbach says, "Are you Duncan Mackey's mother?" The woman immediately looks alarmed. When he shows his badge, she looks worse. What's he done? The woman asks his maid. We just want to talk to him, Rosbach says. Is he home? She steps back from the door and lets the detectives in. Duncan! She hollers up the stairs. Rosbach and Jennings sit in the tiny kitchen and wait. The boy comes down the stairs and the detective sitting in his kitchen sees the detective sitting in his kitchen and stops dead. He looks at his mom nervously. Sit down, Duncan, the woman says sternly. The boy sits and stares at the table. His face is flushed and sullen. Rosbach says, Duncan, we're police detectives. You don't have to talk to us. You can ask us to leave if you want. You're not in custody. The boy says nothing, but looks up at him cautiously. Rosbach says, we're interested in watching the ring that you left with Gus. The boy squirms and says nothing while his mother glares at him. We just want to know if you found a wallet too, something with identification in it. Fucking Gus, the boy mutters. Duncan, his mother says harshly. Rosbach says, if you have the wallet, maybe we can let this go. It seems to dawn on the mother then why they're here. This isn't about that dead man that was found near here, is it? Her face is stricken. The boy looks nervously at his mother and then the detectives. He was already dead when we got there. I can get the wallet. His mother covers her mouth with her hand. I think that would be a good idea, Rosbach says, because this is making your mother very upset, Duncan. And I think it would be better to come clean and turn over a new leaf before it's too late. You don't want to be arrested, do you? The boy shakes his head. I'll get it. He looks at his mother. You stay here. Then he bolts back upstairs, where he obviously has a hiding place he doesn't want his mother to know about. After a strained moment, they hear him pounding down the stairs, and he reappears in the kitchen. He hands the leather wallet over to Rosbach. Still has a few bills in it. Rosbach takes the wallet from him and opens it. Pulls out a driver's license. Thanks, Duncan. He gets up. Jennings, turns to the boy on their way out and gives him a friendly look. "Stay in school," he says. As they walk to the car, Rosbach says with satisfaction, "We've got him. Robert Trainer of Las Vegas, Nevada." He feels the familiar adrenaline surge he gets when a case begins to move. They get into the car and head back to the police station. Soon Rosbach is reviewing some very interesting material. The dead man, Robert J. Trainer, was 39 years old, a successful dealer in antiques. No children. His wife, Georgina Trainer, had predeceased him about 3 years earlier. Rosbach looks at a photo of Georgina. He leans forward, examines it more closely, imagines her with shorter, darker hair. He looks again at the dates. Bingo! Georgina Trainer isn't dead. She's alive and well, living at 24 Dogwood Drive.